of you on Zoom or watching this recording, thank you very much for joining us. We have quite a unique combination, a hybrid of in-person and Zoom, so we will do our best to pay attention to both groups. If anyone can't hear, please let us know, and we will just keep going. So thank you again for coming. We are doing this particular focus of the seminar for the very first time, really focusing on the children of the folks that might be considering a move. When I was speaking to a number of you before the session, asking, seeing if we had some questions, some specific questions that you wanted answered, the majority of the answers were, well, we don't know what we don't know. So we don't know what to ask. And the interesting piece of all of this is when I was speaking with Jim, he was the first of our speakers to arrive. In the 6 or 7 minutes that we spoke, I learned things that I didn't know that I didn't know. So I personally am very excited to hear what you have to say. And hopefully you will enjoy the information as well. So with that, as the speakers share their knowledge with you, if you have some questions, please feel free to raise your hand. If those of you online have some questions, please let us know. We do want to make this interactive and exciting for you. And while we'll have a question and answer period at the end, if you do have something you want to ask, please speak up, and we will address those answers as well. So our speakers today are Jim and Ryan from TVH Group, who will be speaking about wealth transfer, the My Dignity insurance program, and in general, financial planning for estates. And Sonia from the TVH Group, who will be speaking about the importance of wills and estates, and many, many more things. And then Rosalind, who will close us out with what to do with your stuff. You know, we all have a lot. We all have a lot of stuff that we need to do something with. So that will be towards the end. And before we start, I do want to say a big thank you to Lisa Holland of Del Manor at Village Gate West, who's given us this beautiful room and a lovely lunch. I'm sorry for those of you online that you're not getting to experience this food, because the food here is fantastic. So Lisa, thank you again, and we'll have you close out at the end as well with some of your thoughts. All right. Well, Jim? No, Ryan. Ryan will start with the My Dignity insurance program.
Hello there.
All right.
We're on the air. It's hockey night
We're
tonight.
on the air.
So today I'll be talking a little bit about a home plan. For a lot of people, it's understanding that you make a transition often to move into a space, a community. But sometimes it's best for people to maybe perhaps stay in their own home. So maybe a little bit backwards as to what people are potentially thinking. But there are services and opportunities and strategies out there that can help people stay in their own home, find the need and coverage that they have in their own home and the assistance that they need. So what I'm talking about today is My Dignity Home Care Plan. And simply what it is, it's allowing people to stay in their home. And some of the things that studies have shown over the years is that by staying in your own home, it allows you the dignity to stay there, feel comfortable over time. And some of the things that will be shown in an easy to follow pamphlet, also brochure, to help follow along. So some of the coverages that My Dignity offers is allowing people both the mental and physical ability to stay in their home. So what does that include? So My Dignity allows people to offer services within their home, perhaps make adjustments to their home, and it helps cover some of those expenses. And often people are faced with using their own investments and their own savings. And by allowing and pushing that responsibility onto, for instance, My Dignity, an insurance product, it allows them to keep some of those, allowing them to live longer, especially within their own homes. The problem that often we see with some clients is they haven't really prepared themselves or their parents for what does that look like? What does it look like when somebody is unable to take care of themselves? So My Dignity allows this program that if one of the 6 ways to take care of yourself, whether it's bathing, toiletring, grocery shopping, things like that, it allows somebody to come help and support you when it comes to living in your own home. Now, we all know sometimes the government may not always be ready to help take care of us in the long run, right? Anybody else there feel like the government's going to take care of us? Don't worry. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we put in place strategies to take care of ourselves outside of what the government's going to provide. And for some people, they might have an extended health program. And where this comes into place, it helps fill some of those gaps that they won't always have. So there's 2 different benefits to My Dignity. They have a mini healthcare plan and a larger healthcare plan. We'll allow people to go on tvhfinancial.ca, where you can actually get more information. And in the top right corner, for those at home especially, top right corner of our tvhfinancial.ca website is a little hamburger, otherwise a stack of pancakes in the top left-hand corner. And there's a drop-down menu that will take you through and understand a little bit more detail of what it helps you cover, and also allows you to get a quote as to what it is it's going to cost, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. What does it cost you? Are we going to take the responsibility ourselves of all the expenses that come into place when it comes to getting older? And when we get older, we want to pass that responsibility of the cost onto somebody else instead of draining our hard-earned dollars, right? So often people ask about long-term care versus short-term care and also home care. And that's, again, one of the things that allows people to make sure they stay in their home. Studies have shown, especially as people age, wanting to stay in the comfort of their own home. And for the children out there too, making sure that they're comfortable with their family members staying in their own home and making sure that they get the proper care. Because often what we see with clients is that the care and responsibility is then passed on to the children. And for those who are out there, and I'm sure people have had this experience, which is they are unable to no longer care for their family members or provide the proper assistance to them, right? So why not pass that on to professionals? And again, within My Dignity, allows people to find the proper care without passing on the burden to a family member. And in experiences that I've had too, often that can sometimes tear families apart when it's who has the right to make sure that they're getting the right care, and also at the same time making sure that care is professional without putting any stress on ourselves as potentially the younger generation. And for those out there thinking about how that's going to make sure that you understand the burden that it's putting on your younger generation too. So it goes both ways to make sure that you're covering and making sure that you're not relying fully on the government, because we know the government has gaps. Also, for those people that are out there that potentially have their own healthcare system, that it does fill in some of the gaps there too, and making sure that we're pushing the responsibility and cost on somebody else instead of draining our own investments, our own wealth, right? So the greatest thing with My Dignity, I think, is it just gives people options. And part of what we're here is to give everybody options. And My Dignity's slogan is your care, your way. All right. Any questions?
Can children purchase this insurance on behalf of their parents, knowing that they're going to be the caregivers?
Absolutely. Yeah, we very often actually see a lot of children coming together to purchasing this type of strategy for their parents. And the other thing that's part of My Dignity too is we often think about the older generation where 70% of people over to the age of 65 are going to need some form of care. It also applies to the younger generation. We've seen people that, whether it's accidents or cancer, and they're unable to potentially do some of these day-to-day activities. Once 2 of them are reached, My Dignity has the ability to kick in. And we've seen people as young as 16 use this as a way to create more support within the home instead of relying just simply on ourselves. So
I have a question. It dovetails into that a little bit. So when would be the ideal time to consider this insurance? Is there a-
yesterday, yesterday. But the best time is now. And really, it's about sitting down with myself or Jim and visiting our website to find out if it's the right solution and talking to us to find out whether or not it is the right strategy for you of taking off, both the burden of the financial side, but also the burden of potentially putting on your family members. So,
And how is it priced? Is it like a monthly fee or is it an annual fee? And
Yeah.
how is it determined?
yeah, you have your choice of monthly or annually. There is a chart, and again, if you go on to tvhfinancial.ca, you can actually do a quote for yourself. The monthly deposits remain the same based capturing on your age. So the oldest is age 80. So before you turn 81, you're able to apply for this. And as far as the way it works too is it's a really simple application process, a few questions. What we've seen is about 95% approvals go through versus typical health plans, which about 50% sometimes get rejected based on people's health. So as long as you fill out the declaration, I know some people that have had cancers in the past, even people with type 2 diabetes have been approved for My Dignity. So, yeah.
Great.
Can you give us just a very quick sort of mini case study of a client that you had to get some context regarding individual services?
Yeah. So I guess client service that we have is older couple that has come in, and the husband's unable to fully take care of his wife. So the My Dignity offers for them to go in and make sure that the house itself is structurally sound, making sure that whether it's getting up and down the stairs, toiletry stuff to get up and down out of the shower and the bath, grab bars, things like that. We also have a partnership with somebody else with TVH that we've used too, that specializes in finding the right personal health care workers to come into the home too. And ramps outside. Some of the other things that we've seen too is just the simple act of going grocery shopping can sometimes wane for a lot of people. So allowing that support also within the home, and then even meal preparation. I know I would love somebody to come and meal prep for me every night for me and my son. So, but yeah, those are some of the things that we've seen often when it comes to just it's hard to take care of the people that we care about, right? And it's both putting a physical and mental on ourselves, but again, being able to bring in the right people to help take off that type of burden. So, yeah. Sorry, you have a question. Company's been around 14 years. And the reason why part of it is because now we're seeing more and more people age, right? Last year was the first time that we've seen more baby boomers than we have people that are under the age of 14. So there hasn't been a real need for something, but this is one of the only companies, at least only one of the only ones Jim and I have ever come across that has offered a service like this, to provide the kind of need that people are starting to see more and more of now. Canada-wide, yeah. Yeah.
Can I apply for the thing that has been already out for speedy?
That would determine it would determine simply based on the declaration. So again, we'd be able to fill out a declaration, and if the answer is no, we'd know right away. but again, it depends on the ailment. If he's already has one or two of the necessary things of daily living, then there's a potential that we may not be able to service or help support. But there's only one way to find it. Yeah. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you,
Okay,
Ryan.
it was my pleasure.
Let me grab the mic from you. So before we bring Jim up, I have to warn you just in a few minutes that I was speaking with him and learned those things that I didn't know. I figured that we could probably fit a whole 2-hour session just with what Jim's talking about. So considering we only have 20 minutes to give Jim, make sure that you do reach out if you have any other questions. And of course, our online guests can do the same. So Jim, come on up.
All right,
All right, let's get you on here.
thanks. Yep. Maybe I can do one of my Elvis songs.
All right, let's do it.
I'm going to apologize in advance. I am Italian, so I might be speaking a couple of languages at the same time. So don't get confused. Sometimes I kind of change them by putting them in my pocket. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Well, today I'm going to talk about another really important decision that mom and dad have to make when they do sell their home. And that's, what do you do with the funds, with the proceeds of funds? And there's some considerations. Some considerations are, will mom and dad need the money to subsidize some of their income? Are they looking for tax efficiencies? Depending on the income they're generating from those funds, could it potentially cause some clawback issues on their government benefits? And then the other one too is legacy planning. Do you want those funds to be transitioned smoothly to the next generation? So these are the three main considerations. And it becomes a stressful time for mom and dad because for most of their life, the bulk of their wealth was actually held into their home. And it was bricks and mortar, and there was never a fear of losing out or anything like that. And then all of a sudden they are coming in with a significant amount of money. And all of a sudden there's a sense of fear and concern, and they don't want to lose the money. So I'll talk about the normal process, what typically happens, which is someone will give instructions to their real estate lawyer, like my partner Sonia, and Sonia will ask how they would like those proceeds to be paid out. So it's either going to be a bank draft or directly into a bank account. No matter what decision you make or how you decide to receive those funds, it's going into a bank account. And then the bank steps in. And I should say that I'm a former banker as well. So my background is working with multiple bank accounts or banks and trust companies. And I became an independent advisor back in 2001. So the funds go into the bank account, and the banker gets alerted of all this money, and they start to make a phone call. And the phone call will be, you've received these funds, they're in your bank account. What would you like to do with those funds? Do you want to invest those funds? Would you like to speak with one of our investment professionals at the bank? Nothing wrong with that. That's the bank's job. That's what they're supposed to do. Mom and dad then will sit down with the banker, and the banker will present different options. It might be a daily interest or high savings interest rate account, maybe put you into non-cashable GICs because of the safety and the security. And there's some tax considerations that you have to think about. And then the other one is, and I've seen this many times, they will put mom and dad in mutual funds or stock portfolios, which offer some volatility. And it becomes very stressful in having that volatility. But the question always comes up, well, what do I do with the funds when I pass away? How does that going to get to my kids? And I don't want to have to worry about the estate and probating. And the default answer or recommendation has been and continues to be, just name your child or children as joint owners on the account, and that'll automatically bypass the estate when you pass away. That's no longer the case. That hasn't been the case actually for about 6 or 7 years now. And people are still being given this type of recommendation. Now, before we even talk about the estate bypass or some new trust rule or income rules that we have to worry about, when mom or dad add their child or children to their assets, could be their home, could be their investment accounts, what you've done now is you've actually exposed those assets to risk. And what I mean by risk is, if any one of the children that you've named as a joint owner on your accounts
is going through a divorce or separation, well, now you've opened up those assets to being distributed through that divorce settlement. Or what if one of your children are going through bankruptcy? Well, now those assets or funds become assets that are now available to the creditors. This is never discussed when the banker is making that recommendation to the clients. I know this because whenever I've had clients come in to see me, I've asked them that question: have they talked to you about this potential risk? And every single time it's been no, never discussed. Now, the second concern, we talked about estate bypassing. About 7 years ago, new rules have come into play that simply naming your child or your parents as a joint owner on your accounts no longer automatically bypasses the estate. That's no longer the default anymore. So now we're starting to see some increases in court cases and people challenging the estates. And what's happening is we're seeing estates take a year, 2 years to settle because of these claims against the estate. The third thing we have to worry about, again, is in terms of bypassing those, the investment decision. Now, if you don't want any risk, the banker will say, put all your money into a 5-year GIC. It gives you the best rate of return. It's locked in, it's secure, you don't have to worry about it. Now, GICs, non-cashable, should also be cashable at death. But we've also seen estates take 2 to 3 years to settle because of these GICs that were sitting there that still haven't come to maturity. So now the estates are left open. So the final piece I'm going to talk about is this new trust reporting rule that just came out. CRA just put a pause on it recently as well because they did a bad job of informing people. But the bottom line is now if you are a joint owner on mom or dad's account, home, investment account, whatever it might be, now that's technically considered a bare trust. And Sonia potentially could get into more details on what a bare trust is. What that now means is now you have a requirement to report a trust report every single year by simply having your name as joint owner on any of these assets. That's your responsibility. That becomes an added cost as well, accounting cost. I know our partner, David, who handles TVH accounting, I think he was inundated with requests as a result. And it means added fees as well. So simply naming someone as a joint owner now is not an automatic, safe way of avoiding the estate and taxes. Yes.
Is the reason CRA put that in place
They want
was, yes, they were seeing what families were doing to protect themselves
Absolutely.
and now took that away.
Absolutely, right? It's all about them generating revenues, and this was a way for them to generate revenues. So that's a very good point. So that's kind of like the bad news, but there is good news.
Yeah.
And the good news is, and most people don't know this, the banker that you're speaking with may or may not know this. And remember, when you're sitting in front of the banker, they are there to offer you what they have to offer. They will never sit there and say, you know what, there's a better option somewhere else, take your money elsewhere, right? So they're doing their job by keeping you there and investing with them. But the other option that's available, and this is unknown, if you place your investments, could be a GIC, could be a mutual fund type portfolio with a life insurance company's investment. They have what's referred to as a segregated fund contract. Within that segregated fund contract, all investments are now sheltered from probate as long as you name the beneficiaries on those contracts.
Yes.
How about I give you an example? Okay, so last year we had a client, Sonia's client, who approached her. Now this client was the power of attorney on her mom's accounts and was also listed as the executor once mom passed away. Mom, 92 years old, I believe, right? And she was speaking with Sonia about, well, what should we do with the proceeds? Mom sold home, had $1.7 million that she had received, and she took it to the credit union. She'd been banking with the credit union for years, comfortable with them. And the credit union said, just put your child on as joint owner and everything will be fine. So we had a conversation. And the first question I asked was about investment because the credit union was also recommending out of the 1.7 million, she should place $1 million into mutual funds. 92 years old, dealing with market volatility, lots of risk, lots of stress, right? But the good news, and I'll keep this on the side, is we have similar type of investments that also guarantee your capital, and I'll get into that in a second. So in my conversation with her, what we decided to do is she wanted to put all her money into GICs. So the credit union was recommending non-cashable GICs. There's a problem with that. We approached her with cashable GICs that are offered primarily through the insurance companies through this segregated fund contract. The rates are the same. There's no differences in rates. There's no added fees. It's just simply because the life insurance companies in Canada, they do everything through the Insurance Act, not the bank. That's simply why the reason why the banks are able, or the insurance companies are able to offer the segregated fund contract. So we took $1.7 million, which before we took the funds, if she passed away, that was a $1.7 million estate problem that our client would then have to worry about distributing to the 10 or 12 beneficiaries, or there are a lot of beneficiaries as well. And we placed her all into these segregated fund GICs with one of the big insurance companies. And we turned that $1.7 million estate overnight into a $0 estate. No probating, no need for the executor to do anything in terms of distributing funds, and it's fully private. That's the other thing too, is when you have an estate, that potentially can become a public record. So someone can look to find out, well, who are the listed beneficiaries, who's getting what are the assets of the estate? That's all potentially public record. And some people are very private with their money, and they don't want anyone to find out that information. Funds in a segregated fund contract are private. So over the years, I've actually had people call me, children of the parents, to say, hey, am I a beneficiary on mom's account? And is my brother on my mom's account? And what is he getting? What am I? We've had those phone calls. And of course, can't tell you anything. It's all private. It's all locked down, right? So there's privacy protections there as well. So that's with a segregated fund contract, which is only offered through a Canadian life insurance company. You can't get that at the bank. That's why I'm saying you may sit down with a bank. They're going to be calling you right off the bat because they see the money in the bank account. They're going to provide you their recommendation based on what they can do and what they can offer you. But they won't sit there and say to this one client, as an example, we can't really help you to the best of our ability, so you should take your $1.7 million and go elsewhere. They're going to try to figure out a way to keep it with them. Now that mutual fund conversation that we had, so segregated funds, they have mutual fund equivalents through the life insurance companies, but they offer death benefit guarantees as well. So I'm going to give you this example. You had $1 million and you put it into that mutual fund at the bank for a stock portfolio. And mom or dad pass away. That's the year the market dropped 10%. So now that $1 million is worth $900,000. The beneficiaries of the estate are going to receive the $900,000. They lost $100,000 just because of market value. A segregated fund contract offers you, depending on what age you start investing with them, up to 100% death benefit guarantee. So that same scenario, if you had $1 million into the mutual fund equivalent in the segregated fund contract, they would be protecting you for the estate, worst case scenario, on that initial $1 million investment. So if mom and dad pass away, market value is down 10%, and the portfolio is worth $900,000 market value, the insurance company tops it up to the original $1 million investment.
Wow.
So now what you can do is you can actually take a little bit of investment risk to potentially outperform GIC rates, knowing full well that your worst case scenario is that if you pass away, that capital will be covered and protected. That's it in terms of segregated funds and the difference between working at the bank and some of these other options. Are there any questions for me? And there's a lot that I've shared right now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I think this really drives home the point that we always want to help our clients understand is you need professionals to advise you.
Yeah.
That will be unbiased, objective, and look at your situation, your personal situation, and do what's right for you as opposed to what's right for whatever institution you're talking to.
Yeah, and the unbiased point of view. So again, going back to the bank, and the banks are only able to offer certain products to the clients. When you're working with an independent firm like ours, we have access to those bank products in addition to these other offerings as well. So it really comes down to what is the client need? Would we necessarily recommend a segregated fund contract to a 25-year-old? Probably not, right? But for estate planning purposes, it's a great tool. It saves a lot of time. I would say, Sonia, because you deal with wills and estates, a lot of the executors that are named are probably a child or children. They've never settled an estate, right? So now they're overwhelmed in dealing with the distribution of these proceeds, where the insurance company does that for you. You don't have to worry about it, right? So that takes that risk and that burden off of the family member that you potentially would name as executor on your will. So that's it.
And just to add to that, recently I've had a few situations where the executors were the children, or at least one of several children. And because they have their own lives and because they don't really know what to do with the estate, especially if it gets a little bit complicated, there's delay. They're delaying. And I've had a situation where one of the children executors has delayed it for 8 years.
Mm.
It was a mutual client
That
of
was-
Irene's,
yes.
and we just got settled up like this year. And then, further, I have another executor who done 3 years of delay. And the beneficiaries are starting to, come up and say, this isn't right, we need our money, and now we're trying to, get everything closed in order to get that settled. But probates aren't quick at best, and so if there's delay from the executor because they don't really know what to do with it, that adds to the delay.
So I know we had a couple of questions, but then hold that thought because we'll mic you up and you can
Yeah.
speak.
There's
Yes.
action asking, can the offerings be withdrawn to put back into real estate for kids and grandchildren should they want to buy with them?
I don't understand. Could the
So I guess the insurance and any insurance offerings can be invested, so it can be withdrawn to put back into real estate for kids and grandchildren should they want to buy with them.
Well, I guess it all depends on ownership structure, right? So if mom and dad are still owning the real estate and it's in joint name with the kids, you're going back to that bare trust rule. We can't get around that. The only way that you can avoid that is the asset has to be in the child's name and only in their name. Or I believe, and we'd have to confirm this with our partner David, if the child's living in the same home that they're jointly on with the parent, then that doesn't qualify as a bare trust, right? So it's only if they have assets, real estate assets outside of living with their parent.
Yep. She said you had.
Awesome.
Great. I think that there was, Bridget, there was another question. Is it for Ryan?
Will my dignity work families that need it that are using POS?
Sorry, repeat that again.
Will my dignity work families that need it that are using POS?
We've never come up with that. That's something we'll have to get a question on. POAs are very tricky when it comes to insurance. For example, when I talk about the segregated fund contract, if a POA is coming in trying to open up the account on behalf of mom and dad, if the POA is listed as the beneficiary in the will, they can't name themselves as beneficiary on that segregated fund contract. I would say most insurance companies won't accept that. I think we're down to one now that would, right? And again, that's the benefit of working with a team like ours. We're not restricted with one financial institution. We are contracted with all of them in Canada. So literally it comes down to what is it you're trying to find out or try to achieve, and let's try to find a solution based on the companies that we work with, right? So in that instance, we might automatically take them to this one company, because as long as they have a copy of the will that proves that that POA is supposed to be listed as a beneficiary, then they will allow it. But all the other companies won't do that any longer.
Yep.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Anybody on Zoom? No?
No?
All right. Okay, Jim,
Awesome. Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you, thank you.
This.
We'll give that to Sonia. And now the fun stuff.
I
The
always say the
fun-
party starts,
the-
when the lawyers are talking about what they. Pardon, son.
Well, if there's anyone that can make this fun, you can.
I hope so. Well, that's staying.
Oops. I just turned it off. Bridge?
I'm loud enough, so I'm sure we don't.
There we go.
Yeah,
really need-
it's all my.
There you click
Oh,
it.
there we go. Perfect.
All right, very good. Okay,
Nice.
you have the floor.
Thank you. So I'm Sonia Kosoper. I am the legal department of TVH Group. And there's 4 pillars to us. And you have the pleasure of meeting today my business partner, Jim, and our colleague, Ryan. And within our group, we try to provide a holistic approach to your next steps in life. And this next transition, moving out of your home, determining what to do, how to prep, these are things that we can all work together on between the professionals that we have and with you and your family members to provide the right solution for you, the right strategy for you. So I'm bringing up a few topic areas today that have impacted my clients, so I'm sharing them with you. But your situation is unique, and it's best that if you do have questions and you have concerns about the next steps for yourself or for an aging parent, come sit down with us one-on-one. Then we can identify the issues that specifically apply and how to best address those and strategize for your solutions. So I am going on the presumption that everybody online and here today has a will, valid POAs. Because if you don't, just come see me and we'll discuss that first. That is very much the foundation of all of this. And although Jim was talking about how to remove certain assets from the will, there are still some assets that need to go through the will, that need to pass through the will and need to probate. I'll explain all these terms and everything a little bit more as I touch upon specific areas. So what I will be focusing on is 3 things in the transition from moving out of your home, and that these 3 things can save you money, time, and worry. And I always say, if you're worried about anything and you go visit your lawyer and financial advisor, we should take that burden off your shoulders. So you shouldn't be worried. We will help you strategize so that there isn't that worry. There's knowledge there, and you can make the best decisions based on the knowledge that you have. So the first thing is selling the home and what to know before you do. The second topic I'm going to touch upon is periodically updating your wills and powers of attorney. And the third one is planning for probate now, while you're still in good health, while mom and dad are still in good health, and can make all of those very important decisions about the next steps. So selling the home. If selling the home is right for you in your circumstances and you're the children helping out, very practical tip, make sure you have all your documentation in order. Make sure you know where things are, mortgage statements, property tax statements, anything else that is part and parcel of the transaction. But more importantly, make sure all of those other documents, like the powers of attorney, are also in place, because sometimes they're necessary when you might least expect it. Powers of attorney, the original powers of attorney as well, are very important if you're going to be exercising that authority when visiting your lawyer on a sale of a property, okay? How do you hold ownership? So all of us expect that if we're purchasing a property with our spouse, we hold property jointly. And then should, unfortunately, our spouse pass away, it automatically transfers to the surviving spouse. That's what we all think, but it isn't always the case. So I had a client, lovely couple. They went off on a trip, and unfortunately her spouse passed away. They had owned several properties together. One of them shows up on title. So I look at their parcel search and it says registered owner. It doesn't say joint tenants. So we have a problem. I can't automatically register a survivorship application. In her case, there's something called the 3-year rule, which I will explain if applicable in anyone's situation. She had the luxury of time where she could wait out this 3 years and then we could transfer the ownership into her name fully. However, some of us don't have the luxury of time. If our spouse passes away, we may need to access the resources and the equity out of that home in order to continue living out our lives. So if we didn't have the luxury of time, my client would have had to probate the will, would have had to pay the estate administrative taxes, and would have had to wait before for the courts to provide her with a certificate to say you're now authorized to transfer your spouse's half to yourself. And some of us need to move a little bit more quickly than that. Right now, probate applications through the courts are taking anywhere from 6 months plus. And if it's complicated, it may take even a little bit longer. If there's errors on the application, it might take a little bit longer. So let's check title. Let's check your title. Let's make sure everything is in order so that when the day arises, we make sure everything is in order. One of the big considerations is who will be signing the agreement of purchase and sale once you decide that you're going to sell your home. Will it be yourself or will it be your power of attorney? And this becomes a complicated scenario. I'm going to try to simplify it, but if you're going to be using a power of attorney over property to sign on your behalf, we have to establish that there's that the homeowner, the aging parent, is incapable. So we have to define what's capacity. Don't lose me now. Don't let me lose you now. Capacity means simply that if the aging parent is able to understand and can make decisions and understands the consequences of those decisions. Sounds easy enough, right? Okay, so I have a situation where my client signed the agreement of purchase and sale. They were completely lucid, understanding everything. And then what happened? They fell really, really ill and were incapable of making a decision. And the powers of attorney, the children, had to step in and they had to finalize all the closing documentation with me. That's a very clear example of how the power of attorney can be utilized and can be effective. Even in the transition, they signed the agreement of purchase and sale first, and then they couldn't close. They couldn't sign the documentation to close on the transaction with me. Simple enough. I have a trickier situation. I have a client who's has early onset dementia, is understanding the situation, understanding her life situation, understanding everything at this point in time, can make her own decisions most of the time. And I've known her for years, so I know her as an individual and I know her capacity. She comes to sign the closing documentation with me, and I cannot in good conscience say that she has actually the capacity at this moment. Maybe tomorrow it might be different, but at this moment does not have the capacity to sign with me. So I'm stuck. What do? I turn to a medical professional to say, hey, can you give me a report saying that she's incapable so I can exercise the power of attorney? And they say, nope. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. So what I am suggesting is, if you are in this situation where your parent is suffering some cognitive abilities and you think that this might occur, come see me about drafting a specific power of attorney. And you provide very specific instructions to sell this house, and you give them the full authority to do so. And I caution doing this because it is a big authority that you're handing over, because it does not require capacity now for me to be able to sign with the power of attorney. And this way, if there is a risk that that might happen, I am authorized to receive these instructions and be able to carry out the power of attorney and close the deal, essentially, so that the property can be sold. Okay.
So now I have I have a question in that. It's a what if. So what happens if the elder and the family have not been able to put a POA in place before capacity diminishes?
Right. So the POA, just the general POA over property.
Anything. What
Yeah.
about even personal care? What if there's no POA in place before it's needed?
So we're in a situation where we have to seek instructions from a higher authority, either the courts, or even in this situation, a public trustee might be jumping into the situation as well. So we'd have to look outside of the family. Yeah.
Not ideal, obviously.
Not an ideal situation at all. You don't want anyone else making any decisions for the benefit of your parent, because it would just be strictly according to the law at that point in time if anyone else steps in. Yeah. So the last step in selling the home, what happens with the proceeds? So Jim was mentioning, I'm obligated to provide the proceeds to the homeowners, to the parents, and then they have the decision-making power to transfer it out. And always my concern when I'm dealing with aging clients is this going to benefit them? So that's why I always bring in Jim in the conversation. I always try to have this additional advice there to navigate the investments so that it strategizes for their well-being. You have it there for your well-being because you've got lots of life to live still. And then also if they want to pass it on to their loved ones and how that gets passed on and in what capacity. Is it going to be private? Is it going to be a public, situation? So these considerations are always at the forefront when we're dealing with this type of situation. And so the second major topic that I wanted to discuss is updating your wills and powers of attorney periodically. So life circumstances change, and we never want to think about our wills, ever. So many clients that I've drafted wills for 6 years ago who have never come to sign them. Yeah, so we avoid this, but it is so important to update your wills periodically, especially when your life situations are changing, especially when executors are no longer able to perform their duties. Maybe there was an aging executor that was named. We need to update this information, and also your powers of attorney. Update them periodically. And life does change. So I recently had a client who has 4 daughters, and one of them decides to not be, actually, I don't think I'm going to bring up this example because it's being recorded. I'm going to eliminate that example, actually, because it's a little too specific. So needless to say, sometimes there is strife in a family, and there's extraordinary circumstances, like you need to address dependence, maybe dependence with a disability, and you want to make sure that your will speaks to this. And sometimes wills will get contested because they're public, because once we file it with the court for probate, it is going to be a public document. It can be pulled up by anybody, and all the beneficiaries listed will get a copy of the will as well. So it's important for you to speak your wishes. So if you remove someone from your will, or if you include someone from your will, or if there's a dependent with a disability, we can specifically include all of this language so that after your passing, the court can see your intentions can read them and know what your true intentions were, because no one can speak for you at that point at the end of the day. So these are the types of things, and working with a lawyer, that we can really create a document that really speaks to your true wishes. And we can do this while you're still well and capable of making decisions.
So question, in a situation where there's multiple, 3, 4, is it a benefit or to put all 3 siblings on as executor, or is it better when you actually execute the will to have one executor?
Well, this happened to me personally. So I have 2 siblings. Yeah.
And yet, second, because there's 3, it's 2. Generally, so 2 agree on something and 1 doesn't. That the third sibling.
Well, it depends on how we framed the will. So it's jointly and severally, which means that if we say jointly only, then all of 3 of you have to decide. Jointly and severally means you can do it without the other person, and then by unanimous decision or by majority rule. So we can add all this language in. So the example is, it depends on your siblings, because oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it depends on the character of your siblings. Do they want to be in that role? Are they going to be, a pain in the tush? Or, so I have a personal experience. My parents decided it's just going to be me there, obviously, but but it's because, they just didn't want any additional voices. So it all depends on your personal circumstances. And and it's not about the trust or the fairness. It's just, will it be more complicated than it needs to be? If one person is capable and willing and has agreed to take on this responsibility, knowing full well the large responsibility that it is, then let them do it.
And I fully understand that when you're drawing up the will, everybody needs a different state of mind, and actually I'm conscious of that. We don't know what people change, everybody changes, so I'm fully conscious of that. But
Yeah.
What part of what we see, and I'm sure you see it as well, is our examples where the parents do make children co-executors because they believe that will keep peace after passing. And what often ends up happening, not always, but often, is because of that, there's more strife and there is more disagreement than there would be if there was one person making the decision.
Yes, and unfortunately, I've seen all sides of it. So I know there's certain situations where the conflict starts to rise, especially when we're talking about the larger estate. And then money just makes people silly. So
Really does.
it just becomes one of those situations. Yeah.
So for $50 online, can a client get all this?
I do get that question, and the basic answer is absolutely not. Like, you can go online and draft a simple will, and it may speak to your very most basic intentions. But if you want the peace of mind that things are going to be okay after your passing, just visit a lawyer. It is not cost prohibitive at all. We actually do this as a value add to our clients, and because it's so important to have this in place and to have your wishes really expressed.
I know you haven't one question. So how long does a will and a power of attorney take to produce?
Oh, codicil.
Yeah. So yes, we do amendments, which is the codicil to the wills. And I try to get my wills to my clients within 2 weeks. So we go through a process where they fill out their information, they give us the basics, and I only ask you for the basics because I don't want to trouble you for more information until we chat. And then I draft it, and then I present it to you and say, okay, let's discuss this now, because I find that no one wants to think about their wills. So I want to get it to them as quickly as possible. And then we hone in on the particulars, and we get into sort of the nitty-gritty of what's trying to be established here. And I'll give you a turnaround time of about 2 weeks from start to finish to get you your will and get it in place and get the original signed properly, because there's been lots of issues with originally signed wills, whether they were properly stamped, etc. You get everything done precisely.
I have a question that you referenced earlier. You said you have put together a number of wills that people just don't come in to sign.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know the exact answer, but my assumption is that we just don't think about these things. We're just not, it's not at the forefront of our brain. Our life is so busy. We've got so many other things to do. And death sometimes happens suddenly. And then you think to yourself, why didn't I do this? Right? So it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't sort of learn by this, sort of stark thing happening to you, you don't really think it's important. And it is extremely important to get it done, to have it there. And I always say to my clients, just get it done so you have the peace of mind. And you don't have to think about it again. You have your basic structure there. And if life changes, then let's revisit it. But you don't have to think about it again. Let's just get it done the first time. Yeah. Yeah.
You had a question?
With the probating,
Yes.
you're saying right now it's taking about 6 months or longer. So does that mean for the beneficiaries, they're not getting anything until that process is complete?
Yeah. So I was just about to touch that. So the third point is plan for probate. And the beneficiaries will not receive any funds unless they're outside of their will. So life insurance policies that have a beneficiary designation, anything that has a beneficiary designation, segregated. I was just getting Jim, you beat me to it.
Once the insurance company receives all of the completed claims and death certificate, within 10 business days, the checks are issued to all the beneficiaries. That's quick, right? Because even CRA will only give you, I believe, 30 to 60 days. The funeral home will only give you about 30 days before they start knocking on the door and wanting, right? So with the segregated fund contract, so if it's a single beneficiary, we get their death, the death certificate and the claim, 10 business days, money's in their, or check is issued. We normally have either checks sent to our office and we distribute them ourselves, or we will have them couriered directly to the beneficiaries. So just so people know, because probating is taking a long time.
Well, I'm being optimistic when I say 6 months as well. If you're in the Toronto courts, it's taking closer to a year. When COVID happened, they were taking closer to a year and a half. And that's when the application is filed. So there's a lot of legwork that happens in preparing the application. So it's a valid point to consider also your beneficiaries. If you pass, what is going to happen to them? And I was referring to dependents and things of that sort. This is a holistic approach that you need to take to your planning for your estate planning and planning your probate, because there's so many factors going on and you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's the thing. But we do. Like, once we assess your situation from the legal perspective, from the financial perspective, from the accounting perspective, I work so closely with our accounting partner because there's so much to be considered here with respect to capital gains. And I won't even get into that because my eyes glaze over when I'm talking of taxes. But like, all of these components, how can you worry about that? Let us worry about that. Let us strategize and give you this holistic approach, because, well, what other choice do you have? Right? There's no other choice at the end of the day. So in regards to probate, I'll try to wrap it up. What is probate? Probate is when you are authorized by the court to have the authority to distribute the estate. So yeah.
Will your office act as a trustee if the client doesn't want to probate?
Yes,
Well, that's a good question. Great
I
question.
am the executor on several of my clients' wills, especially clients that don't have family here. And there's a residency status as well that you need to have when you are an executor. Otherwise, there's issues with putting up a bond, the full value of the estate bond, and that's prohibitive for a lot of people. So always a resident Canadian, and so I've filled in. But only on their estate. I won't be powers of attorney on. So being proactive. So what is probate? I explained that. Applying to the court, paying the estate administration fees. You have to have a copy of the original will, so make sure that you all know how to access the original wills. The original wills of most of my clients, I would say 90% are housed with me. And so we have them, we know they're secure. And hire a lawyer, because your executors may not do this right. And if you file an application, and I know that's a little self-serving, hire a lawyer, but I've even had situations where the courts have been so picky about an application, thinking you did everything right, but they're asking for more stuff. So they just hire someone who's able to do this right, do this the first time. And speaking about the delay and who has to pay all this stuff, your executor has to pay all of these things, the estate administration taxes. Yeah. So depending on the value of the estate, it's 1.5% at its top. So if it's a large estate, your executor has to out of pocket this money.
Is that filing or once it's
on the filing? So when you file the application, it's got to go along, the payment has to go along with it. And they're paying the legals, and they're paying all these other expenses, you know, funeral expenses, all of this if it hasn't been planned in advance. So sit down with your executor and say, if you had to pay X amount, are you able to do this? And make a plan for that money to be available to them should they need it at the end of the day. Delay. I have a client who can't pay the probate fee. It's a nominal one. They can't pay it. Nominal to us, but not to my client. And they can't pay it. And it just sits. The estate, nothing happens. The estate just sits. Yeah. 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 And the assets are with the bank, or, you know, the home is there and they can't sell. Yeah. And they can't do that. There is an application that we can make if you are in hardship, but my client didn't qualify for that. So yeah, if you're in financial hardship, then that can be circumvented, and it can be paid out of the value of the estate later. But yeah, but you have to qualify. Yeah. Yes.
So if the estate says for 1 to 12 months, they're also costs. Or the estate has to report income
Yes.
that's earned within the estate.
Yeah.
Now you've added more cost on top of cost.
Yeah. It starts to get complicated.
Segregated fund.
That's it is, and for cash, and for cash for your investments, segregated funds is the way to go. So any other assets, it's real estate, anything that still has to pass through the will. So for anything that can be removed from the will, we always encourage our clients. So my question to my clients when we start the process is, you have life insurance, there's their beneficiary. Do you have these? Do you have other options, segregated funds, to remove the cash component from your will, from your estate? Yeah. That is all. Do you have any questions specific to anything else that may have come up? Is there any questions online?
I'm going to throw a question in that people might not know to ask. And it does refer to real estate, and it's the first dealings situation. I think if even one person in this room or online can know about this when they didn't before, I think it's really important.
So first dealings deals with a situation where the property has to be designated in a certain way, and it is the first dealings after the property has been put into the land registry system. I won't explain that so much. That's sort of a legal question. But if there has been no other dealings from the purchase, the time that you purchase, and there's been nothing else, no other transfers, you can qualify for what's called a first dealings exemption. And what we can do is we can automatically transfer the property to the new purchaser, let's say, without having to go through the probate process. It's a rule that's established within real estate that allows these properties to transfer over without having to go through probate. And sometimes they're so absolutely necessary because probate isn't even on like anyone's radar, and then transfer.
Isn't that? But can we import kind of case by case?
It depends on the way the property is identified. Yeah.
So
It's the way the property is designated. Yeah. And also when it was registered. So there's a couple of components that apply there. And so it depends specific to the property. Is it designated a certain type of way? And was it registered in the system as of a certain date, and then that occur prior to that date?
I think a good thing to keep in mind is if you are the original, or if your parent is the original owner of a property,
This may be applicable.
just ask.
Yeah.
Just know to ask a question.
Yeah, and this is what I mean by looking at title. So not only, and it didn't even dawn on me to consider that, but when we're looking at title, we'll also let you know if this would be applicable to you as well, because we'll see it right away and say, oh yeah, the first dealings would be applicable in this situation.
And then that means, so if it's part of first dealings, just say siblings inherit the house from their parent, the house wouldn't go through probate, and then you could put the kid's name on title without having to pay that probate.
Right. I was trying to follow that. Yeah. There's very few instances where you can remove real estate out of the probate process, but this is one of them. However, the value of the estate still gets tacked on to the application. So you can't circumvent paying the estate administrative taxes. That still gets tacked on, but at least you don't have to wait
Wait for probate in order
to
sell the
occur
property.
before you transfer the property. Exactly.
Would some sort of an assessment have to be made on the value of the property?
So we've had instances where there's an agreement of purchase and sale.
Oh.
Yeah, so value's already assessed. And
Or
so,
letter of opinion.
yeah, or a letter of opinion, but value's already there and someone's paying land transfer taxes. So everything is happening in that vein. But if it's a transfer to a child, we just designate it accordingly. And then what we always ask is for the individual's accountant to designate a value, because it'll be necessary if there's any capital gains or anything like that.
One last question. The first dealing exemptions offers an exemption from the requirement that the state trustee obtain probate, also known as certificate of appointment, state trustee. When selling real estate, this can significantly reduce the timeline involved for an estate trying to sell real estate held by the deceased. Is that
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great. Hopefully that registered in the chat for anyone that wasn't following.
There we go.
All right, awesome.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
And
you
if you
so
have
much.
any questions at all, you know how to reach us. It is our pleasure to work with clients to help them really make the right decisions for themselves and their family. So it's always such a pleasure to be able to navigate and guide you in that direction. So I'm taking this with me.
Yeah.
I like the little bird.
Yeah, wonderful, Judith. Yeah, everything is there, and there's a little certificate from TVH Group in the folder. For those of you that aren't here in person with us, we will have a digital version of all of the printed materials that the in-person attendees have, so we will make sure to email that over to you. Okay, we did the fun stuff. Rosalind, please come and take the floor. I imagine this is going to be a juicy chat. Let's get this. Would you like to put it on your shelf? All right, good. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi. My name is Rosalind, and I'm a professional organizer and co-owner of Simply Home Downsizing. I'm here with my business partner, Pauline, as well. Yeah, I'm here to talk about the real fun stuff, which is what to do with your stuff. So our company specializes in downsizing, and we work with a lot of either the children or the seniors themselves, and assist them with the downsizing process, which entails often figuring out what to do with everything that they have in the house, all the, don't want to say clutter, but years of accumulation. um, what we normally start with is just doing a consultation and a walkthrough in the home so we can see, how much there is within the home. And then we like to sort of determine what types of things that, you might be moving with. Like, you've got your heart set on certain pieces and those things. They may or may not always fit. But then there's often an accumulation of all kinds of other things. And we're talking about people that have lived in their homes for 50, 60, 70 years. Oftentimes it's a family home and the children have left all their stuff there, right? All the stuff's still there. Their bedrooms are still there. They just leave, get married, and leave all the rest of the stuff with mom and dad. So, so the initial step is really sort of having that consultation so that you can start planning, for the eventual move and downsize. Because I think it's really, really stressful if you wait until the last minute. You decide, okay, whether for health conditions or other reasons, you decide that you're going to sell your home and move into, say, a smaller space. Then leaving it to that moment becomes very stressful. Then you're on a timeline, a deadline, and then it gets panicky and overwhelming. We try to help ease that, of course, but it's always wise to give yourself some time and start. I think that the starting point would be, when you're thinking about it, maybe when you have friends or family come over to your house, maybe start offering things to them. Find out if there's anything that they might want. So your kids, number one, say, listen, your stuff is still here. We've got to figure out what to do with your stuff, right? So, if you don't want it, then I'm going to donate it, and give them a timeline. Say, it's going to be donated by such and such a time if you don't come and pick it up. Right? So I think that, like, as you're thinking about it, talk to your kids, talk to other relatives, your grandkids, maybe find out if there's anything special. I know that my, mom, she has a stepmom, she has a collection of, what are those crystal things? The
Swarovski?
yeah, Swarovskis, and she has a whole little cabinet of these Swarovskis, and with all the grandkids, she's had them all pick out which ones they want when she's no longer with us. So we're talking about moving, but also that it's like you're moving to a smaller space. You're not probably going to have this big cabinet to put all your touchkeys and all your pretty little things, right? So then maybe that's a good time to just say, you know what, here, grandkids, why don't you pick out what you like and just take them? Then the parents get stuck with them. So that's kind of so thinking ahead, planning ahead, offering things, right? And then there's always the element of decluttering. So what our company does too is that once you've decided, what things you'd like to keep, and say you've already looked at a property that you like, so you're going from a house to a condo, we can lay out a floor plan for you. So take measurements of the items that you're thinking about, keeping, and we put it on a floor plan for you so that you'll know if it really does fit. Because there's been instances where people say, they're adamant about keeping all these things and they move it into the place, and then really it just doesn't fit. And now you're having to pay somebody to go and move it out and whatever. So we like to have a plan and make sure that it's laid out in your new home. You know, if you haven't purchased a new home and you're starting early, then, you know, you don't really have to think about all that. But our company does set up auctions as well to sell the contents of your home, the ones that that nobody wants, right? So it could be everything, you know, if it's high-end stuff, we have auction people that we work with, you know, to sell those items too. And then if it's just all your random everyday stuff, pots and pans and dishes, you know, lawnmower, you name it, there's a company that we work with called Maxsold who can sell that stuff for you. So
How do you deal with a situation where the homeowner maybe believes there is value in the items and the family knows that there isn't? And how do you deal with that emotion?
So we can deal with that in a few different ways. You know, what we can do is show them comparables online, you know, through the auction platform, and also appraisers that we work with that we could send them a picture and they'll say that, you know, this, you know, isn't something that's a value
A value.
in today's market. But I think we just try to take a gentle approach with our clients. And most times they do understand, they do get it. We know that this gentleman here certainly gets it. We were having a conversation earlier and it's like, oh yeah, you know, so, and it's, you know, market values go sort of up and down. Like there's the trend that Pauline was talking about earlier where the mid-century modern and the teak stuff has become super trendy, and all that, you know, younger generation really wants that because it's super cool. And same thing with, you know, well, like everything, right? So, but I think the brown furniture and the big cabinet thing and the Royal Daltons and all those kinds of things are not sure that that will ever sort of come back. Well, I could be wrong. Who knows, right? You never know. So I think we just sort of talk them through it. You know, we just let people know that, listen, you know, you really, you enjoyed all this furniture. You know, you may not fit it into your new place. You may not have the space for the big china cabinet. We will try our best to find a new home for it. And even then, sometimes it's a little tricky. So, you know, but you have to sort of just get them to sort of wrap their head around letting go of things, right? Like it served a purpose, it was good for you, you enjoyed it, and now it's time to sort of move on.
The art of letting go.
The part, yes. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Yes.
Can you give an example? That someone's, a large family home to a one bed condo or
I think you should come up and talk about that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it always starts with, again, it always starts with the complimentary consultation. We go through, we do the walkthrough. We sort of figure out how many days we might need to sort of go in and declutter. So we have a team of professional organizers, and we help our clients sort of make decisions on things to keep and not keep. So we'll go in and I usually group sort of like items together. So we take all of your Christmas decor, right? That's in the basement, and we gather it all up and we say, okay, you've got, you know, 100 little ornaments, you know, which of these are your favorites and which ones would you like to keep? So then the ones that, you know, I think sometimes you forget people have things all over the house, right? So kind of collecting them, grouping them all together, figuring out, oh yeah, I really love these. I definitely want to keep these, but you know what? You can get rid of the rest. So we work through, so we determine how many days we think we could we need to go through the whole house and do that with every single item in your house. And then we have, so it could be 2 days, could be 3 days, could be a week. Then we usually take things off to donation. So then you're only left with the things that you love and you want, and that's it, which is really good. And I think that process should always sort of, if you can get a head start with doing that, then great, because a lot of the times people do wait until later, and then it's really sort of overwhelming when you feel like you have to make decisions and you're stressed out and you can't really decide. So, calling us ahead of, well ahead of time is always more enjoyable, I'd say, right? Because you're really sort of taking the time to think about what things you really love, and then, not making sort of impulsive decisions that you might regret.
That's a
after.
good word.
And then we usually get things taken away, things are sort of packed up. If you've already, you're asking about moving into a smaller space or whatever, our team would then pack, organize the move for you, coordinate and oversee the move to your new place, put everything in place, and unpack and get you set up in your new place as well. But we do a whole A to Z thing, and we project manage everything for you. So, you can have, choose to do a little bit or the whole project. And people like really value the whole sort of beginning, like end-to-end services, because they don't have to worry about anything.
I think that's the important part.
Mhm.
From overwhelm to overjoy.
Yeah,
Kind of looks like that scene from Sword and Stone on the Wizard. All the little dances through
yeah,
Dragon.
exactly. That's exactly how how it looks. Any other questions?
Bridget, was there a question?
Okay, what is the turnaround time for services from start to finish? Does it begin from the agreement purchase and sale sign or not?
Okay, so for our services,
I would say before.
She's asking, does it begin before the agreement of purchase and sale sign or after?
Well,
so
maybe I should
Yeah.
answer part of that.
Sure.
So for those that didn't hear, when does the process start? Whether it's before the agreement of purchase and sale is signed or after? I would say in order for any property to show its best, we would be calling in Rosalind and Simply Home in order to prepare the house before putting it on the market.
That's right.
Before sale. So I would say this would be well in advance
Mhm.
of the property even going to market.
That's right, because it is a part of it, is preparing the home for sale. So you want to do the decluttering ahead of.
Well, and the other portion of this is maybe the older person is moving in with family. Maybe they're not moving into independent living like here or a condo or anything like that. I mean, the families might be choosing to cohabitate. In which case, timing may depend. Maybe you move first and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
declutter. There's a
and
lot of
that
options.
happens. Yeah, that happens as well. But generally before, yeah, you'd want to do all this sort of decluttering and organizing ahead of time.
Is there another question? Michael?
Oh, yeah.
If you have, say, 4 children, as in our case,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen a system where everything in the house is inventory, and then some kind of a choosing system goes into place, first, second, third, fourth?
Oh, gosh, well.
This sounds like wishful thinking, Michael.
Not usually. I mean, hey, Pauline, yeah. I'm thinking about your situation, but that was where everything kind of got inventoried.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yeah, siblings will come to the house and sometimes they'll put little tags or post-it notes on the things that they want.
Yeah,
And then we
yeah.
can come and pack up those things for each individual sibling and have them all labeled.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it happens.
You got 3 minutes in the house. Go.
Yeah.
Extra.
Run in, run out.
It would actually be a fun game.
Child number one
They
always
always,
gets stuff
they
first.
always chooses first,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Anything else you think? you wanna
No,
share?
I don't know. Anyone else have questions for me? No?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
mic from you.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think the important thing with decluttering, downsizing, or anything else that we're talking about today is driving home the need for planning. And Rosalind mentioned it, giving yourself enough runway, enough lead time, so that when the time is right, whether it's selling the home or moving or anywhere else, you have all of that in place. So you're not scrambling, you're not making impulsive decisions, you're not making emotional decisions, because this is a very emotional process for the elders, for the families, whether it's parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles. There's a lot of emotion going around, and if you can mitigate the levels of it by starting well enough in advance, then everybody in theory will be happier. Right? Wonderful. So Lisa, I'll get you to come up here for a moment. And for my team as realtors, one of the most important questions, or the most frequent questions that we get is, so if I move from my house, where am I going to go? Some elders do have the option of moving in with their children, but that might not be an option for everyone. The older folks may not want to do that. The children may not want to do that. There's a lot of reasons why that won't happen. So where they go is critical. And there are so many options. There's so many different options. There's wonderful independent living facilities like this. There are so many different places that someone may go. So maybe I will let you. Yeah, perfect.
So we're lucky enough to host here today. So my name's Lisa. I work here at Del Manor West Village. So what's really nice about knowing what options are out there, yes, there are options to stay at home. Then there's options to move into communities. Maybe it's just something smaller first into a condo. So there's all different things to look at. And so the most important part of that is actually going to tour, look at different places to know what's out there, because you really get a good feeling and a good, just knowledge about the different spots. So when you're looking at community living, it's important to know that when you actually come in, that it's not what your parents used to have back in their day, or what you think that it is. It's not a clinical setting like it was. There's lots of different options out there. So example for our community here, having a swimming pool, we have a gym, we have shuttle, we have transportation, and the suites, you still have a full kitchen here, which is really nice. And that's a really unique part about it too. So it's about maintaining independence, and that's the goal. So being able to come in and looking at different supports and services and amenities and things like that to really understand what is going to be the next step. And a question that we always like to say is just figuring out when is that right time for you? Like, what does ready look like? So does ready look like I'm going to wait until I'm in a crisis situation and maybe I'm not in the decision-making seat? Am I going to make that move ahead of time? And it's knowing what's out there. And the important parts too is that you want to be in the neighborhood that you know, because you like your bank and you know your grocery stores. Or are you looking to move closer to your kids, like to be closer to family? So there's all different options to think about in that process. And some people that they are lucky enough when they're doing this step that they might decide on where they're going to next and then worry about selling their home. And in that regard, it is nice because you're kind of out of your space. You kind of get more assimilated into your environment to know the ins and outs of things. And then you're not in your home when you're doing showings and things like that. So it's nice to have the different accommodations and environments for that. And just for when you do come to tour different communities, and like I say, it's always important to tour. to know what you're looking for. Food is always a big important part of it. So no matter where you go, always try the food. And just getting involved with things that happen at the community. So especially for senior living, because you have that community setting, it's different than a condo because there's kind of sanctioned events and things that you can come and join as you want to. And so trying to get involved as much as you can, because that's a good way to meet people, to get to know who's there, like the personalities, and just the options that are open, whether it's exercise classes, lectures, all of those sorts of things. And you get a good feel about like the acuity level of people to make sure that you're comfortable and confident in that environment as well. And so as we go through this process with people, obviously, and it's nice to have all of like everybody here, because a lot of what we talk about when we do tours and invite people into the community, as they are making the next steps, it's having these proper documents in place, like power of attorney, and being able to have that. So it's nice because it kind of does all tie in together. So it's that proper planning ahead, and that's just what makes it easier, because you want to be in the driver's seat to know that you're choosing where you're coming to. It's not somewhere where you're being forced to go. Like, you actually want to enjoy. You work so hard, so come and have some fun.
So Lisa, how often do you find that individuals don't have those options?
More often than you think. So one of the requirements before moving into a community, and we just have this for our health team, there's something called a physician statement that's done, and that just gives a medical background on the individual. But then also we do require copies of power of attorney for personal care, and then sometimes that they might give us copies just for everything so that we have it on file too. And emergency contact information. So that's just all part of it, so that in the event of an emergency, we know who to contact. And it's also good in those regards, especially with power of attorney, because they're the point person. So if there was an incident or something that happened, we're not calling 10 different people, getting all different information. It's one person. And in the event of some people, it is a privacy concern that they don't want everybody in the family knowing everything that's going on. So it's balancing that too. Yes.
People that are maybe unsure if they want to move into your community, do you offer trial stays?
Exactly. So any hesitation, it's always good to just come have a look, first of all. And it's important to come back, because you're looking at more nitty-gritty things when you come back again. So events, to come join events, talk with people who live here and work here. That's always important. Doing a trial stay, absolutely. So some people that they might want to do it for a week, 2 weeks. So there's different options. And then some people actually come in, let's say if they've had knee surgery or hip replacement, something like that. So it gives you a good sense of being here. It's all on one level, like in your suite. So it's not like you have to worry about stairs or anything. And there's services if you need it. So again, unique about here, we're having a full kitchen in your suite. We do have a restaurant and a pub as well. So included in the rent here, there's a meal credit portion. So you just have the flexibility to come down and dine when you want to. You can also make meals when you want to. So, and then with the trial stay, exactly, you get to try the food, you kind of get into the groove of how that works and all of the activities and things that go on. So you have full access to it. So it's like a hotel when you think about it like that.
Do these services and resources reach Canada-wide or just Ontario?
So so there are different regulations between the provinces. So in Ontario, there are services like, let's say if somebody does need additional care, maybe it's bathing assistance or medication administration, things like that. Services like that can be provided by the community itself with their caregivers, but then also there is an option with like government, that they can become involved and have caregivers with that. In terms of different communities, so there's different retirement homes, like obviously all across Canada. So some of them that they do have locations all over. Some of them are just centralized. So will depend on that. I don't know if that really answered it. Maybe no.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, on that healthcare side of it, what's really interesting is that all communities that they would have a nurse who's there. So they also work as an advocate for you, so that if you do down the line maybe need like a bit of additional support, they can work with the government to help link that, to help have that come in. So again, whether that's through the government or whether it's through the community. Or there you go.
Magically.
There you go. I know it's like all this planning ahead for it. So it's just knowing what's out there. Mhm. We do. So a lot of people still do travel. There was a woman I still remember. She moved in the next day. She went to Florida. We didn't see her for like 6 months, and then back again. So, so you are obviously still obligated to pay your rent for here, but there are kind of credits that you do get because you're not here, like using the meal credit and things like that. Granted, if you had family and they wanted to come over and dine, like the meal on you.
Is there someone else, Bridge? Nope.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. You know, for me, being a real estate professional, part of what I've seen as quite a change in residences is the preponderance, or maybe that's not the right word, more of the independent living facilities and the quality of them, like the suites here that have been renovated that Bridget and I just saw yesterday were magnificent. The dining room is fantastic. And regardless of which facility it is that you're in, if you are going to something that's more independent living, it is really geared to lifestyle as opposed to just taking you out of your home and have you sit like a lump, because that doesn't help anyone. So between exercise and socialization and just beautiful spaces, for me, that's been very, very exciting. Wonderful. Well, everybody's still here. This is great. Any last questions before we wrap up? Nope. All right. Well, thank you, everyone that's been with us online. We will be sending a survey to all of you just to get your feedback, because we definitely want to improve every time we do this. And our online guests, we will be sending you all of the materials. So if you had some specific questions for our speakers, you'll be able to reach out directly. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.